Review by the government advisor calls for a ban on demonstrations outside schools after the treatment of a Yorkshire teacher who felt abandoned and suicidal. And that, of course, is Batley. It took place at school in Batley, which was quite shocking. And it's a wide-ranging report that's coming out tomorrow about intimidation as well of this sort of scale. Whilst we'll probably be dealing over the next week with many of the things said in that report, I do want to concentrate a little bit about what happened in Batley, what this report has said about it, and also the impact of whether actually moving a demonstration 150 metres away from a school so as to avoid intimidation is actually dealing with the problem, which, as you will recall and as we've been talking about, was a religious education teacher who used in a lesson on blasphemy, was using an image from the Paris satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, which depicted a prophet of Mohammed, which led to this demonstration. Joining me to discuss this is the amazing Chris McGovern, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Chris, hello and welcome.
Hi there, Nick. Good to be on your show.
Well, thank you. Look, we can probably all agree about, frankly, how despicable it was, and many of us said so at the time, that these demonstrations were taking place, the way they took place. It was mainly men, it was mainly Muslim men objecting to what had happened that I've just described. But actually, is that just moving a demonstration away from the school dealing with the root cause of the problem, do you think, here?
It certainly is not dealing with the root cause of the problem. And in this case, whatever the rights and wrongs of the teacher concerned, and the school did apologise, and the teacher apologised, there are underlying causes here. We supposedly live in a liberal democracy where there is a diversity of views, but in this particular case, the teacher felt threatened and had to go into hiding. He has a new identity, doesn't feel that he can come back to Batley, although, to be fair, the local mosque leaders have said, he could come back, we've moved on now. But the intimidation was obviously very clear with regard to that teacher. And if you have groups of parents of whatever persuasion outside a school gate, it's intimidating to staff, it's intimidating to children. And these days, and I taught for 35 years, and I know from talking to colleagues, teachers are increasingly self-censoring. They're afraid to say certain things, and they see the example of Batley, and they're afraid. And we live in a society now where you can't lift your head above the parapet without consequences.
Just remind me, you said something there that I think is quite interesting. What was the teacher apologising for? Actually carrying out this lesson, which, as I understand it, he's been carrying out the lesson for about 2 years, but he may not have been showing that image, obviously.
Yes, this is a very tricky one, isn't it? What was he apologising for? I would say, my understanding of the teacher concerned, that he got on very well with the Muslim parents and children, and the school is 75% ethnic minority. It's a good school, by the way, really good as by Ofsted. I think he was apologising for upsetting people. I think he did act it with that a great deal of sensitivity. I think if I was his head teacher, I would have said, look, probably you shouldn't be showing this cartoon because it will upset various people. Why do you want to go and upset people? You could talk about it, don't show it. That's my own personal opinion, but I would respect the right of people to do as they feel free, and they should be able to show the cartoon without feeling they've got to go into hiding. But look, as a head teacher and as a teacher, I would say be sensitive to the local community. And in this case, perhaps the teacher didn't show the sensitivity needed, and that's, I guess, why he was apologising.
The problem for many people is that when a demonstration like this took place, as this report points out, the teacher in question here was not given any support, according to this report, by his school. He wasn't given support from the local authority, and the police were pretty much nowhere to be seen on this. That I could easily read into that this is a case of, we don't want to offend anybody, we'll back off and hang this guy out to dry. That's how this draft summary of the report reads to me. Is that a culture you've seen in other educational establishments? Has there anything similar like this happened?
Well, it's widespread, isn't it? We had a case, quite recently, actually, of a child, an autistic child, I gather, dropping a copy of the Quran and maybe causing minor superficial damage, and that caused protests and so forth. There is an atmosphere of fear and intimidation in our schools. There are certain things as a teacher you may not say, and you're not even allowed to think certain things.
Are you able to give me an example here without putting you on the spot or causing any problems for you? Or give me the area you're not allowed to speak in. Is it transgender issues? Is it around faith and the Quran, for example?
It's both. I mean, on religious grounds, it's very dangerous, I think. I mean, I'd say that advisedly, dangerous to be critical of Islam, and certainly using the wrong pronoun can get you into trouble. And as you would have seen even in the last few days, I've commented on the situation in Scotland, where children, as from April, are going to be encouraged to inform on each other if they feel upset by what they consider to be sort of hateful language. We're going along a pathway in this country which is even, as bad as we can think of it, it's very authoritarian. It's going back, almost to the 1930s. Though I don't want to use cliches and say it's all about Nazi Germany.
No, but I've got to say, that went through my head the minute you told me about people reforming. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about a communist regime or an authoritarian regime. Anyone who is encouraging anyone to do that, the motivation, it fills me with dread, the implications of that as these people grow up and go into adult life.
It's extraordinarily dangerous and it's sinister. We have a situation now, and it's in Scotland, to be here in England also soon, where children, not only are they being encouraged to inform on each other, and of course you might inform falsely, they'll be informing on their parents. So we are really back to the future belongs to us. Those listeners who know that famous cabaret musical, the future belongs to us. This is what was going on in the 1930s. And I don't want to keep banging on about that, but this is where we are. And I suppose North Korea would be similar. We're into that situation. But, the people who are promoting this ideology, which is repressing freedom of speech and freedom of thought, they are well-intentioned. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. That's why it is so incredibly dangerous, because the people who are doing this often are doing it with good intention. Don't upset anybody. That's the thing. And if you upset anybody, don't just think, it's your opinion. It's the person who's being upset who has the opinion. So if you say something to me and I take it as an offence, then it is an offence, and we'll go to the police, and the police will get involved. Schools are going to be obliged in Scotland to report so-called hate crimes to the police, when normally in the past the school teacher or the head teacher would deal with these problems. So it's like a frenzy at the moment. It's going completely out of control. It's exceedingly dangerous.
Chris, I choose my words carefully here, not for fear of offending, but actually being unfair. Are teachers part of the problem in the sense that they are not taking a stand, even though they feel it puts them at risk? Or has this actually been encouraged by teachers, or not necessarily all teachers, but elements within schools that think this is radical and the pathway to good intentions, as you say, they're following that route?
I'm afraid the profession is at fault, and if you put your head above the parapet in the profession and don't go along with the current ideology, political correctness, wokeism, then you won't have a future. You won't even get onto a teacher training course if you don't have the correct ideas about gender, for example, or about race.
But this must be illegal somewhere, surely. I mean, you're basically saying we're censoring people's views before giving them the right to train themselves to improve their key job. I mean, they're probably required to train themselves as teachers, aren't they?
Well, look, as I say, when you go into teacher training, if you get onto the course at all, if you have views which aren't woke, aren't politically correct, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it anywhere. Look, I myself, 30 years ago, was hitting the front pages because I myself protested about exam standards in those days. It was a big case. It was debated in Parliament. It was across all the front pages. I lost my job. And there was no support then, and in those days, at least, there were a few people around who would hold similar views. These days, the profession is overtaken. Look, it wasn't so long ago at the Labour Party conference down in Brighton, where a teacher delegate said, as long as a single child leaves school and votes Tory, the education system is failing. I mean, what a warning that was, But the Conservatives, of course, have been pretty useless. They haven't done anything about that sort of brainwashing in schools. No, the schools are in a bad shape, and you won't become a teacher these days unless you adopt these woke views. By the way, the educational establishment regards this as a triumph. the fact that wokeism is now the new religion and it's through our schools, that is not seen as a failure, that's seen as an absolute triumph.
Well, unfortunately, we've also allowed it to happen, so responsibility parts many ways. Chris McGovern, Chairman of the Campaign for Real Education, keep up the good work and thank you for joining me here this afternoon on talkTV.